If we want to create the shape we see here, we might be tempted to simply select a face and move it upwards in the Z direction. But, of course, this doesn't give us the result we are after, since the moving face drags the surrounding elements with it. Instead, we need to select the face, then use the Extrude tool. The Extrude tool moves only the selected face without affecting the surrounding elements. It does this by automatically adding any new faces that are needed around the face that is being moved. The Extrude tool icon is the first of the toolbar entries that is not also available in object mode. When we hold down the left mouse button over the Extrude icon, we'll see that there are 5 extrusion options, with Extrude region being the default option. If we click on one of the other options, it becomes the selected option, and its icon will be the one shown in the toolbar. On the selected face of our mesh, we'll see an Extrude gizmo with a yellow head pin symbol and white circle. The gizmo tells us we are currently using the Extrude tool. Starting with Extrude region, the selected face is moved along some imagined Z-axis aligned with the face's normal when we drag on the yellow circle. If we drag elsewhere within the white circle, then we have free movement. If we've selected more than one face, the axis used when dragging on the yellow circle is an average of the normals of all the selected faces. There's another extrude control that appears at the top left of the 3D viewport. This allows us to set the direction of the next extrusion to be either along the normal Z-axis or along the global directions. While normal is the default, selecting X, Y, Z will display those directions within the Extrude gizmo. Notice the problem that occurs if we try moving the face inwards. The original outer faces remain, and we can see from the shimmering effect on the screen that a newly created second face shares the same space. We'll undo that extrude and move on to the second extrude option, Extrude manifold. This time, extruding inwards doesn't cause any problems, and Blender correctly removes the unwanted faces. However, there are limits, as we can see if we extrude further down. When we use this option, an upward extrusion extends the existing faces rather than creating new ones. Contrast this to the same extrusion made using Extrude region. Extrude along normals can be useful when more than one face is selected. It extrudes each face along its own face normal. But where the selected faces are touching in their original position, Blender will reshape the faces to ensure they continue to touch. In the top left corner of the viewport, there's a checkbox labeled Offset Even, which ensures future extrusions keep the extruded faces parallel to their original position. Extrude Individual is another option to be used when multiple faces are selected. This time, each face is extruded along its own normal, just as with the previous option. But now, the extruded faces retain their original shape, meaning that faces that touched originally will, in all likelihood, no longer do so in their new location. Extrude to cursor is probably best used when only one element is selected. This option extrudes the selected face to the location of the mouse pointer on each mouse click. Trying the same task from some random viewpoint can create distorted shapes. You'll get the best results if you change to a named viewpoint before you start clicking. So far, we've only extruded faces, but we can also extrude edges, or even a vertex. If we press the E key, we can initiate an Extrude region operation without having to select the Extrude option in the toolbar. When using this approach, simply moving the mouse pointer controls the extrusion, and left-clicking completes the operation. If we right-click, the face jumps back to the original position. Now, in this situation, we could be forgiven for thinking that we have cancelled the extrude operation. But in fact, all we have done is cancel the movement. The extrusion has still taken place. The extruded face just hasn't moved from its starting position. Let's take a moment to see exactly what's happening in this scenario. We'll start with a basic cube and switch on the statistics. Initially, we have a cube with 6 faces. Now, if we select a face and extrude it by pressing E, we now have 10 faces. The increase is the 4 new faces around the face being moved by the extrusion. And if we right-click, the face jumps back to its original position, but we continue to have 10 faces. The 4 new faces are still there, but each as a 0-sized area. That wouldn't be a problem if we went on to scale the extruded face, since this would result in the 4 new faces being visible once again. However, if we want to completely undo the extrude operation, we need to press Ctrl-Z. The E key can be followed by a direction letter, X, Y, or Z. Pressing the direction letter once will move the selected element along the chosen axis of the axis set currently showing in the Transform Orientation field at the top of the 3D viewport. A second press of the direction key will use the normal axis set, and a third press allows free movement. More presses will cycle through the 3 axis options. In the top left of the 3D viewport, distance traveled in each direction, and the axes set being used are displayed. While pressing E only allows the Extrude region option, if we press Alt-E, we'll produce a pop-up menu with most of the extrude options we saw in the toolbar. But the menu omits Extrude to Cursor, while including new entries labeled Extrude Repeat and Spin. We'll come back to those new options once we've looked at the Extrude's last op panel, which differs slightly for each extrude option. When using Extrude Region, the last op panel starts with a Flip Normals parameter. Activating this option will reverse which side of a face is the front face and which the back face. This is sometimes necessary when we've been using extrusion, and we should always check that the faces we can see on the outside of a mesh are shaded blue when we switch on the Face Orientation option in the Viewport Overlays panel. Dissolve orthogonal edges will get rid of unwanted faces when we've extruded inwards. In other words, it does the same job as the Extrude Manifold option. The 3 Move fields allow us to adjust the movement of the extruded face in all 3 directions. Orientation determines which set of axes the 3 previous Move fields are referring to. Mirror editing need not bother us at this point. Proportional editing is a topic we covered in video 23, so we won't go over it again here. But if you do choose this option, you'll see even more fields appear in the last op panel. Moving on to Extrude Manifold, we get exactly the same last op panel as before, but this time the Dissolve Orthogonal Edges is checked by default. Extrude Along Normals has a simpler last op panel. This movement is along the face normals, so there's no requirement for the Move and Orientation fields we saw before. This time all we have is Offset, which adjusts the distance from the original position of the extrusion. Offset Even ensures the extruded faces remain parallel to their original position. Extrude Individual's last op panel has the Offset and Offset Even fields. Extrude to Cursor has no last op panel. Returning to the pop-up menu produced by Alt-E, Extrude Repeat performs multiple extrudes along the global axis. The last op panel's Steps determines how often the extrude is repeated. Offset determines the distance for each extrude along each of the global axes, and Scale Offset is a multiplier figure for the length of each extrude step. Spin is identical to the spin tool in the toolbar, so we'll ignore that option of the menu for now.